Hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome to the Gun Club. Alrighty, welcome into the Gun Club for our weekly update for today. This is going to be Thursday, November 30th, 2023. We did not have a weekly update last week on Thursday with it being Thanksgiving. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday. I know I had a fairly nice time. Got all sorts of goodies, turkey, ham, big thing of green bean casserole, of course, macaroni and cheese, a little stovetop homemade stuffing or dressing or whatever it is. I actually got yelled at. I called it stovetop stuffing, and I was told, we're in the South, you need to call it dressing. Okay. First off, I grew up in the North, so I was call it what I called it growing up. Second of all, I pulled the box out of the package and it said stovetop stuffing. So, yeah, I'm sorry. It was stovetop stuffing. It wasn't dressing. Yell at me later. I don't know. If you want to, yell at me in the chat, on Rumble or YouTube. We've got both of them up and running. You can yell at me for stuffing or dressing or dressing or stuffing, whatever. I actually had someone sit down and explain to me, well, in the South, we use cornbread and it's called dressing. And I was like, okay, well, I use stovetop and they said it was called stuffing. So, okay. Again, for those of y'all who don't know me, my name's Mike Sullivan. I'm a firearms instructor here in beautiful, scenic upstate South Carolina. It's been a little bit chilly recently, although yesterday it was kind of nice in the sun. If you had a sweatshirt on or hoodie on, went out and got to have a little bit of fun. Actually, did a concealed carry class for a few folks in South Carolina. We went out to an outdoor range and shot. And again, with a hoodie on, it was nice. A little chilly just in a t-shirt, but had a great time. I got to go out with three shooters, all of which were fairly experienced shooters. One of them, she had a lot more experience rifle shooting and hunting than she did with the pistol. We worked with her a little bit. The other two, both very experienced shooters, and had an overall good time. Three more protectors qualified here in the beautiful state of South Carolina. We're basically now at the point, I think 1 out of 8 every eligible adults in the state has got a CWP. So definitely like that. Not quite up to constitutional carry yet, but we're doing good things. We're progressing as well as we can, keeping people safe, teaching people fundamentals, teaching them the legals, and getting them out there qualified and trained to protect themselves, protect their friends, their family, etc. Now, as we move into this weekend or weekly update, so to speak, got a few things we're going to be covering. Got a little bit of legal news, and it's old news, but even though it's kind of old news, I still want to cover it just because it's really good news. And there's a section of the decision I want to read. It was handed down. It's a 44-page decision. And don't worry, I'm not going to read all 44 pages. Crazy, but not stupid. Okay. I'm not going to go that far in with it, but definitely going to talk about the whole decision. And there's some stuff in there I want to quote because the judge who did it said it really well. And he said a lot of things in there, and I want to, hit on those because this is the kind of thing, there sort of have three groups of people in the world. We have, the 2A people, the gun guys and gals who are out there, who know the real facts, who know the truth, who know what they're talking about. And then on the other side, we've got the people who are going to be anti-gun till the day they die. There's nothing you can tell them. And then in the middle, we've got sort of what I like to call the normies, the middle of the road folks. They may not have grown up around guns. They may not know much about guns. They may only know what they've seen on TV or in the media or read in some of the print media. And as those of us on the gun side know, a lot of it is very slanted and very negative towards our side. It is what it is, folks. We deal with it. We live with it. It's not fair. It's not correct. It's not proper, but it is what it is. Also, if you didn't catch Tuesday night's stream this week, definitely worth looking back at. We had Carrie Sloan with us from We the Female, and she does a bunch of education, not only firearms related, but overall personal survival, everything else. And she was with us as a special guest on Tuesday. She wasn't feeling particularly well, but did an absolutely wonderful job talking about her organization and what all they do. They have got a raffle going on right now that we've supported. They're raffling off a Smith & Wesson shield with a whole bundle of accessories. I know we donated a range bag and some other stuff to the whole collection, but now it's gotten to the point that holsters are coming with it, ammo, range bag, ear protection, a bunch of goodies. Check their stuff out. They're really doing great work. She works to basically help predominantly females, but generally victims of domestic violence, help them get training or qualifications or get their permits or whatever they need for their situation to help protect themselves and empower themselves to be better prepared. So we've got to give big shout out to Miss Carrie because, again, even though she didn't feel well, she came on to discuss her stuff with us. And from that standpoint, again, we definitely not only appreciate her work, what she does with DV survivors, but also we've got to appreciate the work she does, trying to help out overall. Give you an idea, they've got their campaign running, and they're up now to $2,785 raised. I believe the chances of the raffle tickets are $25 a piece, or you can get 3 for $50. And again, they're raffling off a Smith & Wesson shield and then a whole gaggle of other stuff. And, I don't just ask people to donate. I'm willing to sit there and put right up on the screen. There you go. We donated. It's right there. So I don't just talk the talk. I walk the walk right along with everybody. But again, with the additions to the raffle here, she's got that up on the screen. Let's see, holster from Cold War Concealment and Moms Who Carry, range bag and bleed stop kit from the Gun Club and Valley Medical Services, good high quality electronic ear pro from AKT1 Sport, Value Tech lockbox pistol safe, snap caps, training rounds, cleaning kit, and now they've actually, I believe, added in some ammunition as well. She posted up on Twitter today. Folks, again, you see people not only in the firearms community backing each other, which is what we need to do. The 2A community definitely needs to do great things with that. But beyond that, obviously we in the firearms community put a great deal of faith in Carrie and we're supporting her. That should sort of vouch for a little bit if you have any questions. So by all means, if you can, if you're interested in possibly winning a nice Smith & Wesson Shield 2.0 that was donated by Brownells and all sorts of other goodies with it, definitely worthwhile to go for it. Go ahead and do that. Beyond that, let's see, what do we have? Well, let's dig into our legal update here for a moment. Now, when we talk about our legal update, this is a case that came out of Oregon State Court. Now, I know Oregon, we're not too keen on some of the stuff they do up there, and I get it. But a couple of years ago, about a year ago, they passed ballot measure 1114, or 114, and it required a whole bunch of things. It required safety training in order to purchase a firearm. Now, I'm all for safety training. I don't know if I'm necessarily for requiring it because I think it's kind of a step on the Second Amendment. If we're going to require safety training to buy a gun, and I know this is not the only state that does it, Maryland's requirement just got shot down in their courts. Would we require maybe history training in order to exercise your right to vote? How about in order to exercise your right to counsel or your right to take the Fifth Amendment and not incriminate yourself? What kind of training do you have to have for that? These are civil rights. The Second Amendment does not give us a right. The Second Amendment limits that the government may not infringe on it, may not institute requirements that are arbitrary and capricious in nature and step on your rights. What is your right to free speech? What kind of training or government class do you have to pass to have free speech? How about freedom of religion? Does your church have a government training course your preacher has to pass? So again, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from search and seizure, and the right to keep and bear arms shouldn't require training. It also required police issue 5-year permit to purchase in order to purchase a firearm. not in order to carry it, in order to purchase. The right to keep and bear arms, you had to take a police supervised class of something. We're starting to get there. Then it required background checks. Okay. Background checks, folks, that's already required under the ATF. That's required. We fill out our 4473, our NICS forms. So that's already there. It also banned the sale of mags over 10 rounds. Now, this is where we get into a little bit of a mess because they're trying to ban what they consider large capacity mags. Now, I've got a deep dive on magazine capacities and stuff going to be coming out down the line, but this was one of the things in this public safety goal they had. It was ruled down by a judge on November 21st, so about a week ago, in a 44-page ruling, like I said. Now, here's the part that I want to sort of celebrate a little bit. Judge Raccio, Your Honor, I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. This guy, honestly, I read this ruling and I read all through it and got to give it to him. One of the definitely smarter people, more thinking, more pensive, thought-provoking responses I've seen in a while. Right up there with St. Benitez out of California. Apparently, we do have a couple of good judges left on the bench, and it's great to see. It really is. This is verbatim out of his ruling. The court finds that the large capacity magazine ban, his words, not mine, does not enhance public safety to a degree necessary to burden the right to bear arms. Basically, very simply, he says he weighed as a judge on the bench, does it enhance public safety enough to put that burden on people to either get rid of the 30 round or get rid of their large capacity or standard capacity magazines? Does that benefit weigh? Is it worth the offset? And the judge said no. The judge said no. Now, where does he get this? Well, we'll go a little further. In terms of overall types of events occurring in society, mass shootings rank very low in frequency. Well, yes, Your Honor, you're right, they do. However, as Mr. Paterno's testimony highlighted, and this was one of the people who testified against him, mass shooting events create extremely emotional, sensationalized moments in our society that are highly sensationalized. So what is he saying here? Very, very low in frequency. They don't happen as much as we're told they happen or we feel they happen. But because they're sensationalized so much and blown up so much and talked about so much, we're made to feel like it's a bigger problem than it is. Folks, it's the old story of man bites dog would probably make the papers. It's strange. It's bizarre. It makes the front page. Man bites dog. But if it was something fairly normal, dog bites man, wouldn't really make the front page. Now, if it was particularly horrific or it was a pack of wild dogs who mauled a kindergarten class, well, then yes, it would make the front page. It would be bad enough or bloody enough to make it. Folks, we know how the media works. But when you sit there and you hear a state court judge of the 24th Judicial District sit there and say, no, it doesn't make sense. So the testimony highlighted mass shootings create emotional, sensationalized moments that are highly sensationalized. Very true. He goes on to say, the mass shooting events that have a significant impact on the psyche of America when they happen. People tend to believe these events are prolific and happening all the time with the massive levels of death and injury. The court finds this belief, though sensationalized by the media, is not validated by evidence. So this judge didn't make a decision based on emotion, on whim, on gut instinct. The judge sat there and made a decision based on maybe logic, maybe actual statistics, looked at the real facts, not a emotional appeal, not a knee-jerk reaction. And that's what I loved about this decision. And he broke it down saying, yes, I get it. The people think it's awful and prolific and massive levels of death and injury. Although it's sensationalized by the media, it is not validated by the evidence. He goes on to say, the court finds that 10-round magazines are no panacea. Panacea, for if you wonder, is like a cure-all, no magic pill to prevent a mass shooter based on the evidence presented in this case. So now we have a judge who says, I know you feel like these are bad, and they're bad, but they're not as prolific, they're not as frequent. There's no massive levels of death and injury to go with it. I've looked at the real evidence. And when you look at how this was done, it was run through an organization that is, lots of gun control or anti-gun or negative large capacity magazine, however you want to put it. A lot of non-gun loving individuals were playing this game. And the thing is, these non-gun loving individuals who presented all their evidence to a judge, well, the thing is, they had a lot of emotions. They didn't have the evidence. And this is something, again, for those of y'all who are middle of the road, who, you understand, we're going to have the right to keep and bear arms, but maybe we don't need weapons of war or these mass destructive. The judge looked at it, and it's not true. It's all emotion. And I think we need to stress on this one because, again, it's not me saying it. It's not, someone at Gun Owners of America or FPC or SAF saying it or any of the firearm. This is a judge at a state court level says, I've looked at all your evidence, and it's all emotion. There's not a lot of evidence. 10-round magazines are no panacea, no cure-all, no magic bullet to prevent a mass shooter. And so that, definitely love that one. And lastly, to close it out, the court can find no scientific or analytical reasoning on this record that a 10-round limitation will increase public safety in any meaningful way. Thank you, Your Honor. Because again, let's say, okay, they come up with some great 10-round magazine limitation. Okay. We can talk about the practicalities of it, we don't know how many 30-round mags are out there. We can talk about, well, okay, so if 30-round magazines are banned, the good guys will get rid of their 30-round mags. Will the bad guys do it? Well, the bad guys aren't even supposed to have a gun to begin with, and we've seen how well that works. So, again, definitely a really interesting decision to see a third party, a sitting judge on the bench, sit down, look at all the evidence from the anti-gun organizations, excuse me, and can't find anything to really hang his hat on to ban mags. So definitely not only a good ruling, but a wonderfully well-founded ruling, and something that we can sort of quote a little bit on the side to say, look, here's a sitting judge in the great state of Oregon who says, look, the court can find no scientific or analytical reasoning that a 10-round limit will help in any meaningful way. Thank you, Your Honor. We appreciate it. Okay. Now, beyond that, we do have a couple of incident reports that I wanted to cover, and a couple of these are a little bit old, but as always, I'm not so concerned with the timeliness and getting it out first. I try to make sure we get it out most correctly and most completely and cover everything to the best extent that I can. That being said, this one in Concord, New Hampshire, it's kind of a sad one. It hits a little bit close to home, and we're going to go over it real quickly. Gunman shoots a security officer at a New Hampshire hospital. Now, this happened back on November 17th of this year. It occurred about 3:30 in the afternoon. The facility is a secure facility, primarily treating acute mental health patients, both primarily inpatient. There was a security officer performing screening at a metal detector at the front entrance, at the main entrance. Simple enough. Subject approached to the entrance. Apparently, there was interaction between the subject who approached and the security officer was shot and killed, multiple gunshot wounds, close range. The shooter at this point was quickly engaged by a New Hampshire state trooper who was assigned to the facility to assist with security. Apparently, it's this troopers or a troopers, whether this one or another one, their permanent post to be there to help with security and the safety of the hospital. Now, this is sort of a weird situation, and we're going to go through it. And it hits kind of close to home because in my years of EMS, I've been in and out of a couple of hospitals, a few hospitals here and there. And I've seen many times unarmed, non armed security, empty belt security, doing their job, doing what they're supposed to be doing at that metal detector, screening people, checking people in, patrolling the parking lot, whatever their job is. And if that's all the hospital has, well, that's all they've got. I get it. But here, they've also got sworn law enforcement, more highly trained, theoretically, troopers who actually do have vests and firearms, which this gentleman apparently was unarmed. And would this gentleman have decided to engage with a trooper? He engaged the unarmed security guard. I'm sorry to say it, and as we go through this, it's definitely a sad situation to think that this guy was out there doing his job, and they've got people assigned to the hospital, and yeah, the unarmed person is supposed to stop the man with the gun. How? How? Legal. It's not going to work. The logistics of it are a nightmare. Now, the shooter turns out to be a 33-year-old male, Caucasian. He is transient, has no known address. He had recently stayed at several hotels in different areas. Less than 24 hours before it, he rented a U-Haul truck and then went to the hospital. He had been a patient at the inpatient mental health facility about 6 years ago. He had a 2016 arrest that was for assaulting his mother and sister pretty violently. It looked to be at least, it would have been, I'd say, aggravated assault or aggravated domestic violence on a family member. And the charges were dismissed in 2017 following a competency evaluation. Apparently, that 2017 competency evaluation is likely what got him his stay at this lovely facility in Concord, New Hampshire. Now, why he was able to buy, I don't know. I can't go with that. The weapon involved was a 9mm handgun. Now, interesting to note, the subject left an AR-style rifle with multiple mags and body armor in the U-Haul truck that he left idling in the parking lot. So again, he had his choice between a 9mm and an AR, and he went with the 9mm and shot and killed a security officer with that. So maybe the AR isn't the magical awful gun that everyone told us it was. The sources and where he got the firearms is unknown. Based on his mental health record and his documentation, he should not have been able to purchase them. As a matter of fact, secondary to his arrest in 2016, he had multiple weapons seized at that time. How we're running around 7 years later with firearms, that's still to be determined. Massachusetts is working on that. My point in bringing all this together is here we have so many little nitpicks. Was it a large capacity magazine in the 9? I don't know. Wasn't an AR, wasn't a big bad assault rifle. Yeah, Armalite rifle. I know. I'll get hell in chat for that. But beyond that, an unarmed person to stop an armed person. Hi, I have no weapon and you have to put yours down too. It didn't work. Now, years ago when I was 18, 19 years old, I worked a variety of security jobs. And that's why this one hits kind of home. You know, I worked these unarmed security jobs, sometimes sitting at logging in trucks at a plant or sometimes going around checking fire alarms in an industrial facility, things like that. Did I need to be really armed for that? No. But as part of a perimeter border access control at a secure facility, to me, having an unarmed person to engage with all the armed people or anyone who's armed, or to make sure they're not armed by running them through a metal detector and wanding them, it seems like it's a really, really poor use of resources. Would we send somebody out in street clothes to play tackle football with somebody who is in full football gear? Would that make sense? No. Would we send somebody out dressed up like a figure skater in, figure skating attire into a hockey game? No. Would we send somebody with no fire gear on, no turnout coat, no helmet, no SCBA, no flash hood to go be a firefighter and go put out fire? Probably not. Why do we have unarmed security to deal with a potentially armed threat? And if you say it's not a potentially armed threat, then where's your metal detector doing there? Reevaluate this. If you work at a hospital, you work at a medical facility. Now, TSA, granted, at the airport, I would say low risk, but they do have airport police standing by, airport, armed sworn security. But if you've got a hospital that has an unarmed security officer, and again, I did the job, so I'm not trying to diss security folks or anything else. And if I make the comment about, unarmed wonder cops, I called myself one for plenty of years. I sat out there and I made sure that the tee times at the golf were right. I made sure that all the residents coming and going from the condo had the little parking tag. Okay, a little bit different than doing access control at a psych facility, a secure state psych facility. So, what do we have? We had an unarmed individual out there, unarmed security officer, who basically amounted to cannon fodder. And I'm sorry because it really stinks. And I'm going to tell you in a minute why it stinks even more than what I've covered so far. The gentleman who was working this job, who's a retired gentleman in his 60s, 63-year-old security officer. He had previously served the United States military for 3 years. Subsequent to that, he worked 28 years in law enforcement and retired at the rank of chief from one of the local police agencies there. This gentleman was as trained and as qualified, likely, as the trooper was, and probably had more years of experience. This is a former police chief. However, I'm sure I can bet you money the reason he was not carrying is he's no longer working in law enforcement capacity, so therefore the hospital wouldn't let him carry. I bet you when it comes out, it was a hospital decision that our security is going to be unarmed. The trooper, he can be armed. This guy can be unarmed. And I'm not faulting the trooper. I'm not faulting the officer who died. To have a man who served our community and our country for 31 total years between military and law enforcement shot in a facility like this where he was disarmed literally by the hospital, I'm willing to bet you. And the reason that hits kind of close to home is I've got a very good friend of mine who was a retired law enforcement officer who worked ER security at a small hospital. And he was responsible to respond to emergencies all throughout the hospital. He was also responsible whenever anyone was breaking out into a car in the parking lot. And I asked him one day, I said, Bud, what are you doing? And he's like, well, the hospital doesn't want me to carry. Okay, so you've spent how many years in law enforcement? You're allowed to carry anywhere in the state, but, well, the hospital will get upset. Well, I wonder how upset the hospital is now, because chances are, if he worked in law enforcement for that long, he could have easily been qualified to carry that weapon. But I'm sure politically and, optics, it didn't look good to have security armed, but the trooper could be. So, Concord Hospital or New Hampshire Hospital up in Concord, they stepped on it on this one. They really did. Folks, again, look at this, what we're doing. It's a different world than it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago. If you've got somebody who is doing screening, I went up to the courthouse a few weeks ago, had to do jury duty. Do you know that the person who screened me for weapons at the courthouse was the deputy sheriff who was wearing a weapon? Huh. And the other person who was taking the buckets out as they came out and handing them back to us was, again, a sworn deputy sheriff, vest, firearm, whole 9 yards. You never think of doing it at a courthouse, having unarmed people taking guns away from people. Why are we doing it in hospitals and healthcare? If we're going to put somebody there, either get law enforcement, get qualified armed security, and yes, you can get trained and qualified armed security officers. I have worked as an armed security officer, and I'll say for the record, I was assigned a couple of times to unarmed assignments when they were desperate, and I was available on a night off. They'd call me, "Can you go in?" And first question I would ask my captain is, "My service weapon going to be a problem?" I'm qualified as an armed security officer. They're getting that as a free bonus. If it's going to be a problem that I'm wearing out there, don't send me out with a target on my chest and disarm me on the way there. This guy got disarmed, and I'd be willing to bet you, I don't know for certain, willing to bet you there's hospital politics on it. But definitely a tragic, tragic ending on this one. The gentleman who did the shooting, he was killed by law enforcement. And again, gentleman was required to be unarmed, working security. Congratulations. We got a 31-year veteran of law enforcement in the military killed. But we didn't have bad optics, at least not until someone got shot by him. And now this one, Beaver Creek, Ohio. This one again happened back before Thanksgiving. A shooting occurred in a Walmart store. Now this one was really kind of an interesting one because it happened about 8:30 at night. 20-year-old male suspect entered the store and opened fire, injuring 4 people. One was critical, the others were stable, non-life threatening. Nobody was killed, fortunately, by the idiot. And it was immediately came out that somebody had an AR-15. That was one of the first things I heard. It turned out it was not an AR-15. It was a .45 caliber high-point carbine that had a 9-round magazine. So let's see. AR-15. No, can't blame it. Large capacity magazine. No, 9-round. Can't blame it. Weapon was purchased a couple days before. Okay. Maybe talk about background checks or better mental health checks. Who knows? The suspect was described as not socialized, had attended his schooling primarily online. Oh, previous 3 72-hour psych holds, both voluntary and involuntary, and per law enforcement, should not have been able to acquire the weapon, yet did with minimal problems. You know, the background checks that they're doing now, they keep saying they want to do more background checks and background checks on private sales and do this. Folks, this man had been threatening suicide previously, had been EPC'd, emergency protective custody previously, was still able to go out and get a weapon, still passed his background check. The ones they're doing aren't even that effective. This is the second person with a psych history. You see a thread here, don't you? Second one with a psych history that went out and bought a gun. Now, the suspect did turn the weapon on himself prior to arrival of law enforcement, which I'm sure will save them a great deal of paperwork and drama on their side, save them going through their shooting investigation. He was found deceased when the team made entry. Now, subsequently, the FBI did go to the man's home, and they found numerous Nazi materials from the shooter's home. They believe it's racially motivated. It was a white guy who did the shooting. They've recovered extensive journals, writings, and notes, but none of that's been released. But it's immediately coming out that the FBI believes it was racially motivated. Now, he had 4 victims, 2 black, 2 white. He himself was white. Now, he may have 50 Nazi flags. He may have written all sorts of atrocious things. It's just amazing to me when it's, okay, we can't blame an AR-15. We can't blame large capacity magazines. We kind of dropped the ball in the background check. Oh, he's a Nazi. He's a Nazi. Folks, wait 24 hours and you hear it come out. Now, I don't know what his history is. I don't know. Again, he may have all the Nazi stuff in the world. He seemed to be a 50-50 equal opportunity shooter to me. That's what I'm thinking. Now, I don't know whether he just happened to find those people. They said he did walk past other people in the store. Why, he just happened to shoot 4 people and then himself. So we have him himself. He's a white guy. He died. and then 2 of each race wounded by him. Again, is also, again, multiple mental health encounters. That being said, 3 previous hospitalizations. So even if his writings and his journalings, and I quote, show all kinds of patterns and trends and everything else, um, it's the rantings in the diary of a madman. We've seen this many times. What he thinks today, what he believes tomorrow, and whether or not he believes that, the space dog is talking to him. Come on, man. We don't expect them to be particularly logical at that point in the day. This clearly, again, didn't have much of a plan. He walked in, shot 4 people, let some other ones go, don't know, and then walked up to the front of the store at the customer service area, shot himself, and that was done. Again, at least he saved the PD, the shooting investigation stuff, and they don't even have to clean the firearms, so I'll take it. Good win. Again, we try to find what we can blame it on, don't we? We always try to find what we can blame it on. Now, this is an incident update, and this is out of Louisville, Kentucky. The shooting originally happened back in April of this year. It was at the Old National Bank. Now, just in case you don't remember it, you're not familiar with it, we've had one too many of them. Let's go back through. On November 22nd, Louisville Metro PD released their investigative report from this incident. Now, the incident, a 25-year-old male bank employee entered his place of employment like any other day and walked into his office. He did a little prep work in his office with the door closed. Shortly thereafter, he exited with an AR platform rifle and began to open fire on multiple bank employees. Of the bank employees, we had 5 killed and 4 wounded. They were basically having their Monday morning meeting, sitting in the conference room, and he walked into the conference room and cut loose with an AR. 5 dead, 4 wounded. He then laid in wait and basically ambushed position, and when responding LMPD units got there, he wounded 1 officer, striking him in the head, although the officer did survive, thankfully, and was then killed by PD in a hail of gunfire. Now, again, this one had the AR platform rifle, killed 5, wounded 4, plus them, revoked his own birth certificate, or got his own birth certificate revoked, wounded 1 of the responding officers. Definitely kind of a mess. So, what prompted all this? This is his workplace. This isn't some guy who went somewhere else. This is workplace related. Now, at the time, the parents came out and questioned if he had CTE. If you're not familiar, CTE is basically chronic traumatic encephalopathy, basically damage in the brain due to multiple prior impacts, concussions, things like that. When you look at CTE, sometimes it can look like early onset Alzheimer's, maybe Parkinson's. There's also several people who have been known to have sort of rage incidents related to it. One of the most common ones we hear of is Chris Benoit. They ruled he was CTE subsequent after he killed his entire family. So that being said, he had multiple concussions in middle and high school athletics. Actually had to wear a specialty helmet for a while due to basketball. So, yeah, when you wear a helmet to play basketball, you've got a little something that's been rattled loose. But unfortunately, this couldn't be diagnosed. The only way to diagnose it is actually physically look at the brain on autopsy. So after this all happened, the family said, well, maybe CTE, maybe something else. Because again, this annihilating your own, attacking your own coworkers, definitely is an issue. I see in the chat, yes, the football concussion disease. Basically, multiple previous concussions cause brain damage. Like I said, Chris Benoit, he's the best one. Aaron Hernandez, yes, that was possibly also CTE as well. There's a few. There's actually several well-known people who have had CTE issues pop up. And again, a lot of times we don't know until it's too late because it can't be diagnosed like face-to-face. It's typically like diagnosed on autopsy. And in order to have an autopsy, you've got to be dead. And we don't like getting dead. And we really don't want to just get someone dead just to get them checked for CTE. So we kind of got to wait till it's all over. Now, his parents said in the investigation that he spent the entire day before Easter Sunday chatting with them, no sign of anything wrong, spent the day with his family. Also, prior to that Sunday, he went to his therapist on Thursday. They did some changes to his medication. No major problems identified, no suicidal, homicidal ideations or anything like that. So everything seemed to be as hunky dory as it was. Now, he was having some stress at work, and he had told his mother that he was considering going on FMLA due to having a panic attack the prior Monday, although we don't know for what or what had happened. Apparently, he had voluntarily checked into a mental hospital after a suicide attempt in 2022. They did the tox screen on him, and I think it's big to note no drugs or alcohol were found in the system, with the exception for his prescription Xanax. So again, the whole let's rule out the SSRI issue. I know it comes up sometimes. This ain't one of them, guys. And it was a question right from the beginning. Psych history, was he on whatever med? Again, this is the way we can diagnose and learn about these things. Now, the suspect had purchased the weapon 6 days prior to the attack, and he wanted to actually live stream the shooting on Instagram because that's just what the world needs to see. I read the reports and look at the, crime scene photos on this, but yeah, not everybody needs that. You'd end up like me, and we don't want that happening. So, going a little further, we're digging in on this, looking at their investigation. What did they find? Again, the CTE was ruled out by the Mayo Clinic. SSRIs ruled out by the drug scan. He had purchased the weapon legally 6 days prior to the attack. He had left several journals. He left notes. Now, this is excerpts out of his notes. Really interesting as far as his thoughts and his motivation, his inspiration. Where was his brain as he planned to do this? This is what happens when those in power stop listening to the rest of us. They won't listen to words or protests. Let's see if they hear this. What was he protesting? I have decided to make an impact. These poor people did not deserve to die. So he had still a sense of right or wrong. There was no persecution complex. No, oh, they're all out to get me. No, these people did not deserve to die. But because I'm able to buy guns, they are gone. Perhaps this is the impact for change. Upper class white people dying. Yes, that's right. He, by his words, went and killed other human beings, innocent people, at his workplace in order to push gun control. Now, when you hear zealotry go, this is zealotry. He later in the note says, I'm tired of fighting. I may be psycho. I'm definitely sick. Notes go into blaming politicians and fat cats. There really is not a solid political leaning in it, honestly. Some of it is blaming the politicians, very blindly, the politicians, not one side or the other. He was very anti-gun. He was also very much worried about climate change, worried about the world, said all the politicians are bought and paid for. Again, having a lot of issues in his world, definitely not the most stable cookie in the jar. Again, in a lot of these, when you read these manifestos, and I've read them word for word and looked at the notes, you really can't find a succinct thesis. It's not the, what we would think of writing for our thesis or our senior project, that we have like a comprehensive opening, a middle, and an end. It's usually ramblings of brain droppings of sorts. But yeah, from this standpoint, to me, again, definitely, obviously quite disturbed, obviously quite problematic. But on the other side of that coin, it is what it is. We hate that people died. That part of it sucks. It's awful. We know that. On the other side of that coin, fortunately, 5 people were wounded who did survive. Hopefully, they're all doing well. They're all able to put this beyond them. I mean, this guy had worked at the bank for some time, had been there as an intern. Apparently, his father or his family even had some friends who had worked at the bank, possibly how he got his internship there. Coworkers described him as basically being, lazy, underachieving type thing. Not a lot of real positive feedback, but nothing negative, no history of violence. He did have his psych history. So here we've got 3 with, significant psych histories that are all out there doing dumb things. One in, New Hampshire, one in Ohio, and this one here in Kentucky. And this one actually said he did it point blank for gun control because, that's what we're going to push. Folks, if you want gun control and you want, magazine stuff banned so far, that you're willing to go out, go through the background check, go through all the legal stuff, buy a gun, and then go shoot up your coworkers, do me a favor. Either get you some serious help or at least, check out, do it for yourself on the way there. Don't do it to like 5 innocent people and wound 5 others for gun control. Really? Climate change. Yeah, climate change was another big thing, But we've gone through his stuff. If you're interested, hit me up. I can get you a link to where the copy of the investigative report is and a copy of his notes. It was, a little bit disturbing to read, and I'll leave it at that. But, from a standpoint of what it was, it is what it is. Alrighty, beyond that, let's see here. Got a couple more things here. One thing I definitely want to mention is 'tis the season. That's right. It is EMS research season again. And if you are an EMT, an AEMT, or a paramedic who needs to fill up a little continuing education gap in your world, needs to get some hours, check out Valor Medical Services. Their online EMS Academy has about 40 something different courses, all of which are CAPCE accredited for use nationwide in all the key topic areas. All the mandatory topics are covered. And if you go on there, you can get either a bulk subscription, which is good for like a year to go ahead and knock out your hours if you're really short, or if you just need 1 or 2, you can get courses here and there as needed. It's now up at a 15% discount. Also, I know that having talked around, Valor is offering a special deal right now where they are going to offer free to anyone who asks. They're going to do free transcript evaluations for their research. And here's their website page here on valormed.net. You can go on and you can get a free transcript evaluation. Now, what does that mean? If you say, well, I've got a bunch of hours, but I'm not sure what goes where or how to put it in the system, and you want to talk to somebody, a human being, a person, not a push 1 for smart people, push 2 for dumb people, push 5 for English. You want to talk to somebody who sits down and says, okay, show me what you've got. Let's sit down and work with you to make sure you've got what you need to research your registry stuff. You can do that. Just go there on their website, reach out to them. Valor does, again, large amount of EMS continuing education. They're based here in upstate South Carolina, and they are truly committed to your success. So by all means, if you need EMS education, reach out, get with these folks. That will help you out. They will hook you up, and they'll make sure that your research goes smooth and easy. All righty, onwards and upwards to something a little bit darker than National Registry research, should we say. Oh, yes, here we go. The good guys and girls with guns. We've had quite a few of these recently, the good guys and girls with guns, and it's always kind of interesting because you get these things and you look at what's going on. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. But Alrighty. This one occurred yesterday because you know what? We can find them for about every day of the week. A man with 3 active domestic violence related warrants broke into his ex girlfriend's home, shot her new boyfriend. Both he and the both the boyfriend and the woman returned fire, causing this gentleman to flee. The woman remained uninjured while her boyfriend was treated at the hospital for a single GSW to the hip. The suspect now faces other additional charges when he's caught and arrested. Not only did he come in and shoot at her and the boyfriend, but the boyfriend and the woman shot back. Had this attack not been stopped, how do you think this would have ended for the guy who got shot? Had this not been stopped by civilians with firearms, had they just picked up the phone and called 911, how dead do you think they'd be by the time law enforcement got there? And again, not faulting law enforcement. They can't ride around on our shoulders, so it is what it is. But on the other side of that coin, it can be kind of problematic. Let's see. Additional information on this reveals that the suspect was armed with a rifle and a handgun. He was also already awaiting trial for, among other things, threatening to shoot a baby during a 4-hour standoff with police. That's out of, well, this one's out of Brazo, Texas. The November 5th shooting may have been self-defense when a homeowner shot and wounded an armed man while generally acting erratically, threatened and fired on the property. Folks, again, when you wonder why good guys are carrying guns, it is what it is. Now, this one's November 27th. A driver in Susquehanna Township, Pennsylvania, turned the tables on a would-be carjacker, retrieving a shotgun from inside the vehicle and holding the suspect at gunpoint until police arrived. The suspect had multiple previous outstanding charges. You've all seen a pattern here. Again, had this gentleman not been able to retrieve a shotgun, been able to hold the bad guy at gunpoint, fortunately, I like the fact that the bad guy didn't get shot, but the good guy's okay too. I'm glad that no one got shot. I really am. On the other side of the coin, if we have to make a decision of one or the other getting it, well, I'd rather the bad guy catch around. I'm sorry. I'm like that. Yell at me in the chat. Now, this one, November 26th. Police in Richland, South Carolina. This is 2 counties away from me, just down the road. Said that a woman fatally shot a man in self-defense after he followed her home, aggressively approached her, and tried to hit her. The woman had an active domestic violence protection order against the man. As we read that, as I finish that out, I want that to sink in. Carrie Sloan was on the other day from We the Female. I've read her story out before. We've shared it before. The woman had an active domestic violence protection order against the man. She was doing everything right. And after she did everything right, she reported the incident, she got the restraining order, everything else. What happened? Well, he followed her home, aggressively approached her, and tried to hit her. Yeah. Again, this lady, good girl with a gun, law-abiding citizen. Apparently, this guy didn't want to take no for the breakup. I don't get it. I don't know what the whole details are. I just know the bulletin points I get on my feed. But again, a female using a firearms as a force equalizer, like Carrie and I talked the other night. I get, picked on sometimes for saying that, some women are not as strong as some men. I'm not saying 100%. I'm not saying that, a woman can't defend herself or anything like that, although I get told I am. What I am saying is, on average, a female is much better placed to defend herself from an anxious, aggressive male than an unarmed female would be. How's that? Both of these cases, we've got girls with guns protecting themselves from an idiot law enforcement officer, a former law enforcement officer. But yeah, it is what it is. Now, here's another fun one. This was November 24th. Police in Olive Hill, Kentucky, say that a woman attacked a victim with an axe before shattering a glass door at an EMS station and then entering while EMS personnel were sleeping. EMS personnel held her at gunpoint until the police arrived. Now, I'm paramedic. Now, I was always told we weren't allowed to have guns at the station. If someone breaks in and decides to kill us, we should die with dignity, die with our boots on. Perhaps like a security officer did. Folks, if you're an employer and you're doing the whole gun-free workplace thing, just remember, you may be setting up your employees to fail. You may be setting up your employees as cannon fodder, but that's okay. I'm sure your receptionist family or your security guard's family or whoever it is will greatly appreciate the nice things you say about them at their funeral. Again, if somebody wants to and is trained to carry, I am so glad that these two EMS employees were carrying. As a matter of fact, if I do happen to reach out or get in touch with them, I may well even try to set them up with some free subscriptions for the Valor Continuing Education platform, because you know what? They didn't depend on someone else for their safety, their security, their well-being. They did what they needed to do. They protected themselves. I hope they didn't get in any trouble, but folks, if you did, reach out, because I'll hook you up with some stuff, some freebies from Valor, because we got to take care of each other on this stuff. All righty, well, that's about all I've got today. Again, I saw these and these stories just, time and time again. Think about it. Hit another human with a hatchet and then broke into an EMS station with the hatchet. Yeah. Boy, am I glad that EMS crew was protected and they had firearms. And again, you think about so many EMS crews, county policy, no firearms at all. Well, that's great. What happens if someone breaks in? What happens if someone thinks you might have some drugs on the truck that they want? What happens if somebody decides they want to break in and get those laptop computers you have in the station or whatever? What is your life worth? I feel bad for our, retired police officer up in New Hampshire. That really bothers me because I know people who have been put in that position by a hospital, not because it was a legally smart position, not because there was any real risk management to it. The individual was sworn law enforcement and totally qualified to carry a gun, had carried one for years successfully, but because of the job he was in, he was told he must disarm. So, yeah, and I'm sure the hospital feels very bad about it. And the epilogue to that story, this is where it gets real interesting. Not only did the hospital is now upgraded, they now have armed security. Only took one dead person to do it. Folks, be smart, be safe. Bye.